You know, something happened over the weekend in Hong Kong that we wanted to share with you. You know, it almost seems like the character of the protest is getting meaner. Is that the right word? If not, at the very least, maybe we should say intensifying. Joining us now here, News with Rick Sanchez correspondent Michele Greenstein, who, as you know, did some really great and intense reporting from Hong Kong. Here's what I want to do with you tonight. Instead of doing the macro version of this Hong Kong story, let's do more of a micro version and look at some things that have been going on there over the weekend. Let me start with this. So look at this and tell me what it says to you as somebody who spent some time there. These are people orchestrating the stomping, the trampling of a flag. Hey, turn up the audio. I want to hear it. I almost sense the jovial nature of this, the release that seems to be taking place in these thousands of people all taking turns stamping or trampling their flag.
Right.
Michele.
I mean, look, this is a generation of Hong Kongers that, for one thing, didn't grow up under British colonial rule, but for their entire life and for what some would call, you know, an education system filled with anti-China sentiment, they've been told over and over again that, you know, the central government in China is taking something away from them. So this totally makes sense to me. When you are told that someone is coming to take away your freedoms, it's of course very powerful to be stomping on that flag.
It's like we're growing up in the United States with Russia, right? I mean, the Russians are coming to kill us any day now.
Sure, absolutely, and it's very intense in Hong Kong. I mean, look, every, population is exposed to propaganda. Here we have, anti-Russia, anti-Iran, whatever. In Hong Kong, it's very intense because it's a specific situation where you have this city that is also under the rule of another government, but also has a special status as being autonomous and kind of has a superiority complex against people of mainland China.
Good explanation. Here's the second one. This is a cop beatdown like none I've seen in a long time. Look at this. That's a police officer getting the crap kicked out of this guy by protesters. And you have to ask yourself, my God, if that happened here in America, they would have all been dead.
Well, let's start with this. The use of force by the Hong Kong police has been undeniable. They've been using batons, tear gas, water cannons. That's not a question. That's not conspiracy. That's something that certainly happened.
Okay.
So it's not surprising that the police would be using force when things like this happen, but it's not just the protesters that are being violent. On the other hand, even though we've been seeing lots of images of peaceful marches since the beginning of June, all summer, it's often after these peaceful marches and rallies that these, what some are calling riots, these more violent demonstrations begin. And I noticed in the beginning of this segment you said that it looks like the protest movement in Hong Kong is intensifying. I would say that that's not even the first or fifth time I've seen video of protesters beating people. It's not the first time we've seen them beat people with bars, and certainly not the first time they've used violence on the police. So I wouldn't say that this is a new development, but that doesn't make the video any less shocking.
But one of the things I take away from that is they're constantly saying they want to be more like the United States because we are freer. You and I both know as journalists that you can't do that in the United States to a police officer without getting either killed or spending a lot of time with a lot of bruises all over your body.
Well, many say that this is a sign of how restrained the Hong Kong police have been, that they haven't actually been using the force that you would see in the U.S. On the other hand, let's not compare cops to cops in the U.S. because the cops in the U.S. are the absolute worst. The bar is on the floor in that scenario. So, of course, we don't support police violence in any way, but that's very true that compared to the cops in the U.S., it's been very restrained. And you've seen,
and by the way, as a guy who has a brother who's a cop, I would tell you that the cops in the United States would argue they're put in a situation where they have to be the worst because our country has fed that in a certain way. And by that, I mean our racist tendencies that have lasted for more than 100 years.
There's a lot of systemic issues here, treating communities of color as war zones, etc. But what I think we need to talk about is what's called the marginal violence theory. And this is something that Hong Kong protesters have been employing all summer. And one protester even explicitly disclosed this strategy to the New York Times. And they said essentially that what our strategy is to push the government and the police to the edge in order to get the police...
Can you stop real quick?
Sure.
Down to 30 seconds. But given what you just said, look at this next video.
Sure.
Here they are blocking a street with a giant fire. And again, they're blocking the street. I mean, that's a disruption and destruction of private property.
And I witnessed many fires just like this one. This is not uncommon, something unusual that we've seen for the rest of this summer.
So that's part of the strategy.
But think about it. Every time they use violence and they force the police to respond, then they win in the court of public opinion because all the cameras are there ready to photograph the police reaction.
Michele, great job. Great conversation. I'm glad we were able to take them. So you haven't heard that we're the ones covering the stories that you won't see covered anywhere else? In Venezuela, Kazakhstan. Let's go to Hong Kong. And the media reaction to that has been crickets. How about the way we cover those stories? What the hell does that mean? Wowee, wowee, wowee. That's the key word in this case, uprising. Keep, can you believe that? Watching. This is the right thing for members of the media to do, to actually pick sides. Look, if you like what you see, subscribe.